Hello, welcome to the Craig's Motel. My name's Conan. In today's video, we're going to be looking at the new effects for the Akai MPC standalone Air Sprite and Air Ether. Let's jump in. Okay, so my intention with this review was to do something that I don't normally do, and that is load up a plugin that I've never opened before, never looked at before, go for a voyage of discovery and kind of find out how it works, have a look at it, run some tests with it, put some sounds through it, and just have a general play around with it and kind of do that live, impromptu, never done it before, and then give a quick review at the end. Now, I don't normally do that. Normally with my reviews, I like to know the plugin really, really well first. But I thought I would try it out with the new Air Ether and Sprite. And then, out of the blue, I don't know where it came from, a memory hit me right in the center of the head like a diamond, penetrating my skull. I knew these plugins from somewhere. So, you know where I'm going. Basically, Ether and Sprite are about 2 years old, if not older. I think they were released about 2 years ago, and I think I tested them around about 2.5 years ago. It was definitely at least 2 years ago. So they're not new, unfortunately. So I can't do this fresh, I've never looked at this plugin before, and just to sort of, it's a bit of an anticlimax. I'm still going to go through it. I don't remember ever using them again in my DAW. Obviously, they're only available for the DAW. Now they're available for the MPC standalone. But looking at them very, very quickly this morning before I started doing this video, the GUI is exactly the same as the versions that you get on your DAW. So, okay, they're new for the Akai MPC standalone. But let's not, let's not take a left turn into negative path. Let's keep going in a straight line towards positivity road. And let's have a look at these plugins. So for anyone who's interested, it's 50 degrees C outside and it's pretty hot inside. So it's a bit sweaty and I am persevering, but that's Dubai summer. I should be used to it by now. I've lived here for 15 years. So we've got the MPC. I've got the two plugins loaded. I've got a bunch of different sounds. Just a drum beat. If you can hear that funny noise in the background, that's my dog snoring. Clap and snare, nothing on there. A female vocalist on there, some strings, and a couple of stabs. Classic house stabs. So we're going to use those sounds and play around with the two plugins, which I'm going to at least try and pretend that I've never used before. As I said, I haven't used them in a long time, so they are probably still going to be quite fresh and new to me. So we'll start with Ether. Now, both these plugins are kind of like, I would put them in the bracket of sound design. They have delay, they have reverb, there's LFO, there's modulation, there's flange, there's a whole bunch of different things. So they're kind of, multi-effects, I guess, which are very, very trendy at the moment. A lot of companies are releasing multi-effects. So there's two new multi-effects in the MPC standalone, and they are, multi-effects can be very, very useful because generally they're going to take up less CPU, less processing power in your MPC than if you were to load up a delay, a reverb, a modulation, a distortion, a flanger, and a crazy wacky compressor, etc. Loads of things. It's all in one plugin, so it's all in one place. So it makes it a lot easier to work with. Multi-effects, I mean they're big at the moment, and almost all companies are releasing versions of them. Now, as I said, this is actually a couple of years old, but it's new to the MPC. So with Ether, and as is the case with all multi-effects, I tend to say to people the best way to test or to get to know a multi-effect plugin is, I promise I'm going to play some sounds in a second, is just to run through some presets. Because the presets are made by the guys who coded the plugin, or they'll be made by well-known sound engineers that know their stuff. And, obviously a lot of you guys out there do know your stuff, but there's also a lot of guys out there who are new to the game, so they're not going to want to dive deep into all the different pages, etc., options that you have in the plugin. But for those of you who do want to get stuck in, you can do that as well. So it's not just a bare multi-effect that you just flick through presets. You can flick through some presets, find something that's in the kind of ballpark that you like, and then you can start playing around with it. So I mean, that's pretty mental. That was a clap, by the way. So you can flick through the presets at the top here, and there's a whole bunch to play around with. There is some really, really cool presets. Now, by default, a lot of the presets, if not all, no, actually not all of them, they'll have the mix set to 100% because you would probably put it on Ascend. At the moment, I've got it as an insert effect, which means it's actually on the program. I've made a video about the difference between insert and send effects, so please watch that if you don't understand what I'm talking about. But as I'm using it today as a insert effect, I'm going to dial back the mix a little bit, which is just here. This is kind of a general option that you have here where you can change the width. Or you can have it all the way up. You can change the mix, which I'll have at about 50%. So we can hear some of the original signal, and then obviously you have an output at the bottom. And then here you have a percentage, an overlooking percentage of being able to dial in each individual part of the plugin, if that makes sense. So you have pitch, modulation, delay, animation, compressor, and LFO rate, and you can switch those off and on really, really easily. At least I think that's what that's doing. Yeah, and you can change the percentage, so you can change the amount that you have. Okay, so that's very, very simple, very straightforward. And here you have a bunch of different options. Now, those kind of things are going to be great to mess around with if you want to automate, because you can introduce some real movement in your mix with some crazy sounds. Like I said, it's very sound design. So now that's the main page. Okay, you've got Ether there. You can now go into the separate pages where you have a bit more hands-on, a bit more options to change the individual sounds that you have in these 6 options here. So the first one is space, which gives you options to change the space, the pitch, and the modulation. Space is this area here. Pitch and modulation, so you can change these easily enough. You've got a bunch of things that you can choose from. It's really nice, actually. You've got these detunes. These kind of things are really, really good on synths. And modulation you can change as well. You've got rates that you can change, all the kind of options that you would want for modulation, pitch. And this is a really, really nice section, actually, because you've got a lot of control over how the actual feedback is going to sound. So your delays, you've got pre-delay, etc. You've got your timing. You can damp it. So it's kind of like reverb and delay, and it gives you, most importantly, it gives you low pass and high pass filters here to affect the return that you're getting. Next page, you've got motion. So here you can affect the delay, the animation, and the compressor. Now, nice little option here with the compressor. Okay, so you'll be able to hear the difference. If I just maybe turn... Yeah, let's leave it like that, okay? Great kind of reggae sound you've got going on there, like a spring reverb almost. So here with the compressor, you can compress the reverb return, you can sidechain it, or you can actually compress the actual signal. You can hear how punchier that snare drum sounds now. It's got a real snap to it. Just make sure I'm not overdriving. So you've got, you know, it's not a full-on compressor, but you've got some controls that you can play around with, the attack and the release. Let's give it a short release. 100 milliseconds. It's not that short. And let's give it a longer attack. Yeah, I mean, it's not the greatest compressor in the world, but it's probably more useful on the actual reverb because it's kind of a general compressor rather than an in-depth compressor. So with the animation, this is nice because you have a selection here of different kind of, they're almost kind of like gates, I suppose. So you can play around with these. Let's just come out to this page again, and yeah, let's make sure that's right up. Let's take that down. Actually, what we'll do is we'll flick to a different preset. There we go, because that exponential one's got a nice use of the animation. So these little options here you can play around with are nice for that kind of stuttery kind of sound, and that's the animation. So if here you can change the rate of it. The balance, the smoothness, so it's kind of rounding off the return a little bit. So instead of going ta-ta-ta, it's going ruh, or something softer. F. There you go, that's softer. So that's nice. You can have it synced or unsynced. You can change the kind of color of it, which is kind of applying filters, low pass, high pass filters. So that's really, really useful for sound design on a long sustained sound. Even actually, because the animation is actually on the return, the reverb sound, although that's a short sound, obviously, a clap and a snare, if you've got the effect applied to the actual reverb return, that's kind of where you're getting that flutter from. I would say that is probably heavily influenced. Actually, the plugin, the sounds that you're getting from it are heavily influenced by a really old unit from Eventide called the H3000, which was, I seem to remember, very, very expensive. And there was a setting on there called Crystallizer, I think it was called. Was it called Crystal Glass? Soundtoys have made a plugin, actually, which copies it. And I think the guys from Soundtoys, or one of the guys from Soundtoys, might have actually used to work for Eventide. I'm going on a bit of a tangent here. Sorry, that was fluff. It wasn't just me doing random arm movements. But I would say that kind of crystallized, reverby, glassy kind of sound is definitely influenced by the H3000. I was lucky enough to use one maybe once or twice in some more high-end studios that I worked in. I know they've got a couple in Abbey Road, which I've been able to look at but not use, because I've not actually worked in Abbey Road. I've just been in there for a quick look. So next page, you've got the LFO, and you've got some decent options there for the LFO. You know, it's pretty nuts. But because there's so much to it, like I said right at the start, with these kind of plugins, because there's so much to them, I would say that even if you're an expert at these kind of plugins, or even intermediate, I would still flick through the presets and see what it's got to offer, because you're probably going to find something very quickly that's in the ballpark. And unless you're a full-on sound designer, you're going to have in mind kind of what you want to use, or you're going to get inspired by something. You might find that rather inspiring. And flicking through the presets, you're going to get inspired. Then you can dial it in. You can change the sync. You can change the mix, the balance, the width. The basic kind of things. The kind of broad stroke things. So find a preset that you like and then play around with it. So that's Ether. Now let's go into Sprite. Now Sprite again is a multi-effect, I guess, but I would put it in a reverb. Well, I suppose both of them are delay reverbs, to be honest. But with Sprite, I'm more likely to use it as a reverb. And the way that it's set up, great GUI, by the way, it looks cool. And I do seem to remember that's exactly how it was in Adore, the original VST. I don't think it's any different. Correct me if I'm wrong. But again, you've got a whole bunch of presets which are really, really cool. Some more useful than others. Obviously, that one, for instance, It might not sound great on vocals, but it might sound really good on something else. So flick through the presets again, maybe get yourself in the ballpark, and when you flick through the presets, take a look at what it's doing to the actual settings on the plugin, and then you're going to get more of an idea. So again, like Ether, you've got a bunch of pages where you have a main page where you can have a general broad stroke effect on the plugin. You've got the EQ, the comp, the depth, the mix. Then you've got your different options here. There's distortion, modulation, delay, and reverb. I'm assuming, I'm going to make this assumption that this is the order in which they run in. Probably the same with Ether as well. So you're going to distort it first, modulate, then delay, then reverb. That's probably what you would do if you did an effects chain. So, I mean, if the option is to be able to change the order of things, that's great. But I don't seem to remember that you can do that. So going into the first page, you get absolute control over the different distortions. You can see here, you have a bunch of options: diode, synth, digital, etc. They're going to be subtle, but obviously you can affect them in such a way you can change the mix for that. So that's going to add a little bit of saturation and some odd even harmonics, etc., just to kind of give a little bit of grit, I guess. Moving on into the next page, which is the first modulation one. Again, you've got a bunch of different options. And you can change the rate. And change the depth of it as well. Next page, mod 2, is the phaser. But again, you have different options. So you've got a chorus, multi-chorus, phaser, and flanger there. And obviously the controls down here will change depending on what you've got, but they're pretty standard controls for phase, flange, etc., where you have depth, rate, feedback. And you've got a nice bit of width there as well, which is handy. Although I don't really trust the width plugins in the MPC, but that's a different story. I thought I had some coffee left. I haven't. Gutted. Right, so moving on after that, you have your delay and reverb. So again, you have the settings at the bottom where you have more options to change it around, and you have some different options in there as well. Let's pump this right up. See if we can send it into self-oscillation. Eat your heart out, Radiohead. Awesome. And then finally, do you get to it that way? Yes, you do. Yeah. Yeah, so you have the option for the reverb at the end there. You have to press that twice. Oh, actually, wow, you got 3 different pages on there. Oh, does this mean we got multiple pages on the other ones as well? No, it doesn't. Okay, so didn't know that. 3 different pages for your delay and reverb. So there's a lot going on there, although you have actually got, what is that last one? Last one's for pitch shift, EQ, compressor. So it is a little bit fresh to me. I don't remember this at all. So you've got some options here as well. Let's take them off. So you've got quite a few options there as well, high pass, low pass, and you've got a bit of compression there as well, and you can dial in the mix as well between the delays and the reverbs. And then finally, the output. Now with the output, what I noticed, or I do remember rather, is that you have options here. Now see, amp bass, all these options here, earbuds, new boombox, gramophone, etc., they're already available in the MPC in, is it lo-fi? Maybe it's, or Flavor. Is it Air Flavor? It's either Air Flavor or Air Loafer. I think it's Air Flavor. I can never remember those two. I think it's Air Flavor. So these are already options that you have, but it's built into this plugin, so you wouldn't need to load that plugin, which is, again, like I said, the advantages of a multi-effect. Then, of course, you have manual, which for me personally is the handiest because I like to have absolute control. So it's a fairly decent EQ, I guess. The GUI's not great, but actually, do you know what? I'm going to take that back. The GUI is absolutely fine because it tells you exactly what you need to do, tells you what the numbers are, and you can do it. It hasn't got flash knobs, fake screws in the corner, bits of rust in the corner to make it look like an original Pultec or whatever. It just does what it's supposed to do. So I actually prefer that. I'm kind of fed up with that whole thing where somebody just redresses a standard EQ that's been available indoors for years, but puts a new GUI on it so it looks like a rare EQ that was only made by outer Mongolian sound engineers, and they only made 3 and only one of them exists, and it's in Paul McCartney's garage. So this does exactly what it's supposed to do, and it shows you what it's supposed to do, and that's fine. So you've got width, you've got a limiter as well. So you've got quite a lot of control over the actual output and the sound of everything, and that's right at the end of the chain. So that's useful. What would be really, really cool is if you could change the order of things, but perhaps that's asking too much. I don't even think that you could do that in the original DAW version. But the way that it's set out is how I would set out a chain if I was going to do anything. Maybe distortion might come later on, but modulation would certainly come first. And I might perhaps distortion if I was doing synth sounds, perhaps. So you can have some real fun with it, just playing around with different sounds. But you could go down a rabbit hole. If going down rabbit holes is your thing, then you're going to love this plugin. But, generally my advice to anybody with these kind of plugins is find a preset that's kind of in your ballpark. I know I'm repeating myself now because I've said that quite a few times. So, I'll give a full conclusion in a second, but they're pretty useful, to be honest. There's a lot included in each individual plugin, but we'll get to the conclusion right now. Now, in my reviews, I try and be subjective because it's a review, right? But I also try and be objective as well. I like to try and show people how maybe they can use the plugin, and I like to be fair, and I like to be honest, and I like to be transparent. So transparency, full transparency, I'm using this on a trial. It's $49 at the moment. They say that's a 75% sale, which means that if you bought it and it wasn't in the sale, it's $198. So let's get into the conclusion on this bundle. $198 for these 2 plugins in your MPC, in my opinion, is an absolute rip-off. Most, if not all, of the effects are already available in the MPC, but just not as a multi-effect. So it would take a little bit of work and quite a lot of knowledge to be able to recreate it, but it's certainly possible to recreate. And because it's programmed, coded, ported straight from a VST that Air have made, and these guys have coded it for the MPC standalone, it's most of the other Air plugins that we have available in the MPC, they're kind of incorporated. Like I said, the flavor, the Air flavor, some of the lo-fi things, certainly some of the other delays and reverbs and distortions. And what Air have done with these 2 multi-effect plugins, is put all of those effects into one thing. So from that point of view, a massive pro. You've got one plugin slot taken up, and you've got all of these different elements that you can turn off and on. You could just use a little bit of distortion and a little bit of reverb if you wanted, but you've still only taken up one slot. For sound design, really, really cool. For synths, for vocals, for guitars, for certainly I would reach for something like this, especially Air Ether, with instruments, maybe pads, kind of things that I might put trance gates on, those kind of things, long sustained sounds, subtle use with maybe backing vocals. It really is limitless because there's a lot to them, but massive, but they're not new plugins. They're 2 years old. I could even be older than that, to be honest, but I think they're around about 2 years old. I think it's a little bit cheeky, them being sold as new plugins. They're not really forcing the point saying these are brand new, but they're kind of, when you tell sort of some truth, but you don't tell kind of all the truth. They're kind of doing that. And I think that's a little bit cheeky because I've seen a lot of people on forums go, where have you seen these new plugins? And those people are obviously not aware of the fact that these plugins have been around for a good few years. It's the same with that. What was that other plugin that I didn't give a particularly good review of? The dirty lo-fi type thing. Again, that was an old plugin, and they were marketing it as a brand new plugin. So yeah, it's brand new for the MPC standalone, but it's not brand new. The coding's not new. The functions, the effects have been available for some time, and like I said, pretty much every single different part of the effect is available in the MPC already for free when you buy your MPC. But this does put it in one plugin, and that's the biggest advantage of multi-effects. And perhaps that's what you're paying for. Would I pay $49 for it? Yes, I would, because $25 each, if you look at it that way, 2 different plugins, very, very handy, and they're good plugins. I mean, don't get me wrong, they are both good plugins, but I have a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth when they do this, and I love, honestly, I love my MPC. I know that I don't always give the best reviews, but they're honest and they're my subjective opinions. This plugin will be really, really useful to a lot of people, and they're both really, really good plugins. It's a really, really good bundle for $49, but it's not new. And it's not worth $198. So if you do want it, I would buy it now, because if you have to pay $198 for this, then you're going to be gutted, in my opinion, because it's not worth it, because you've got all the plugins in the MPC already. So thanks for watching. This is The Crates Motel. My name's Conan. Till next time.